Okay, so this is the June 2025 multiple choice. Again, I'm just going to show you some tips and tricks with going through these problems. I'm probably going to skip some of them that I feel like are not worth your time. But again, you should be first attempting this by yourself. You can check the answer key, and then if you need explanations or you're super lost, you can watch this video. If you're looking for a specific question, just skip through until you find the question. Okay, so this first question, the expression 10 square root of 2 is equivalent to, so anytime you see the word equivalent, it just means the same, right? And so easiest way to do this is just put it in your calculator, right? Alpha y equals, let's
years,
see.
politicians talked
Another
about
ad.
easing traffic in New York. Governor Hochul delivered.
Okay, so 10 over square root of 2, right? So that's 7.07. And while that doesn't look like any of these answers, it's definitely not these two. We can see, we can check. So let's do 5 square root of 2 in our calculator. And if you notice, it's the same exact decimal. So the answer is 3. Okay? For this next question, on which interval is the parabola only increasing? So if we trace the parabola from left to right, so starting here, it first goes down and then it starts increasing, right? In these cases, we're always talking about the x values. So it starts here. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So it starts increasing at 3 and then it goes on forever. So your answer would be this. Which scenario represents an exponential relationship? That means you're looking for either percentages or double, triple, something like that. So Kristen's New Year's resolution is to lose 1 pound each week. That is linear because you're going down by 1 every week. Sarah wants to increase her grade by 5 points each quarter. Again, that's linear. You're going up by 5 each time. Tommy wants to reduce his spending by $50 each month. That is also linear because it's going up by the same amount every time. And Dylan hopes to grow his business by 5%. Percents and the words like double, triple, whatever, it's always exponential. We're going to skip this question. This is not something that we talked about in class. Which polynomial has a degree of 3? That means highest exponent is 3 and a leading coefficient of 2. So first of all, highest exponent of 3. And then leading coefficient of 2 means the number in front of the degree is 2. So this would be 4. The expression this is equivalent to, so again, one way to do this is you can do the math, right? You could put the 1 here and you can distribute and combine like terms. Just be careful with multiplying. Let's say you forget how to do that. Since it says the word equivalent, that means the same. Just go to your calculator. Easiest way to do this question is put this in y1 and put one of the answer options in y2. Let's see. Yeah, so we're going to try, I just want to kind of get straight to the right answer, so we're going to do this one. So in y, you're going to go to y equals in your calculator, and you're going to put the question in, you're going to put the expression in the question in y1. So see how I'm being very careful with typing. Be careful between minus and negative signs. And then in y2, right, let's put in one of the answer options. So I'm going to put the first answer option. If I hit second graph, you'll see that they match. That means it is the correct answer. That means they're equivalent, which means they're the same. Okay? Going from here, we're given a table that's used to calculate the average height of a tomato plant X weeks after it's transplanted. The data is represented in the table below. Between weeks 4 and 12, what's the average rate of change? So you should be thinking of slope, and you should be thinking of change in y over change in x. And so specifically, it's telling you weeks 4 and 12. So these are the 2 points you're going to use for your slope. So to go from 4 to 12, we would add 8. You can always do the second number minus the first one. 60 to 12 is plus 48. Again, if you don't know that off the top of your head, just do 60 minus 12. So to find the slope, we do the change in y over the change in x. So that is 6. Okay. And then for this next question, Chloe's solving the equation. Her first step is shown below. Which property justifies the step? So here's her first line. I'm going to just rewrite it so I have space. And then somehow she makes it equal to 0. If I want to make it to equal to 0, I would just subtract, right? So this equals 0. And then I have x squared. This becomes positive 2x. And then the minus 3 doesn't go to anything, which is what she got. So what I did was I subtracted, right? So this is the only answer that makes sense. Okay. For this question right here, this one's a little bit tricky because this is what we call absolute value. And again, you don't have graphing Desmos, so it's a little bit more difficult to do it in your calculator. But it's saying which function represents this graph, but shifted 2 units to the right. Okay, so let's try. So we need to look at the graph. In order to look at the graph, we need to use our calculator. So we're going to go to y equals. I'm going to just clear everything that's there. I'm going to start with the original one. So I'm going to put this in y1. To get the absolute value is you're going to go to math. And let's see. And you're going to go over to NUM. And ABS is absolute value. So I'm going to put the x in there. So let's just first see what this looks like, right? So if I hit graph, okay, so it looks like this. Now we're trying to see 2 units shifted to the right. So let's type into y2. I'm going to type this in. So again, math, NUM, hit enter on ABS. So x plus 2. So now I'm going to hit graph again. So if you look, if I'm looking at the vertex specifically, from blue to red, it moved 2 to the left. But we want 2 to the right, so that's not quite right. So let's erase y2. Again, hitting math, number, and I'm going to put x minus 2. And I'm going to hit second graph. Oops, not second graph because I just want the graph. And then let it load. So if you notice, right, the vertex or like the bottom, it's not a vertex, but the bottom has moved 2 to the right. So the answer would be 2. Okay, so let's keep going. This question is a little bit tricky, gonna be honest. Basically, it's saying what step would you use in the substitution method? So we have 2 equations. In order to use substitution, we have to get a variable by itself. The easiest one to do that with is this y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 4x on both sides. And basically what this means is now this, which is equal to y, can replace this y over here. Okay, so it would look like this. So 2x minus 3, and instead of y, negative 4x plus 5 equals 10. So let's see. Oh my god, they make it even trickier. That's crazy. They switch these. That's crazy. I guess, like, you know, instead of writing negative 4x plus 5, you could also write this as 5 minus 4x, right? I'm just writing it in the same thing. So I could change this to 5 minus 4x, which in this case, then it looks like this answer right here. This is a very tricky one. For this question here, it's actually asking you to complete the square, which is also tricky. It's done the first step for you, which is nice. At this point, you just have to complete the square. So x squared, and then we don't know what this box is, but we know the middle term is negative 6, so we need to split it in half. So 6 split in half is 3 and 3. So this is going to be x and x. This is going to be negative 3, negative 3. This would be 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. All right, so this just becomes, we use the outside, so it's going to become x minus 3 squared. And then we're going to do 27 plus 9. So this would be your answer. Again, very tricky. The multiple choice was a little bit tricky for June. This multiple choice was tricky. Going to skip 12. We never talked about this in class. 13, again, it's asking for the domain. Domain is the possible x values. So it starts at 0, and then it ends at 12. So it's definitely not these ones. Now the question is, this is an open circle. So that means it doesn't include 0. So this would be wrong because the square brackets mean it includes 0. this works because this sign means that it doesn't include, right? So if this was correct, it would have to look like this because it doesn't include 0. It's an open circle. Okay, the sum of 3 and square root of 5. Sum means plus, so let's add them in our calculator just so we can kind of see what's going on. So 3 plus square root of 5, 5.23, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it goes on forever, so it's definitely irrational. And then terminating means it ends, right? So this is saying irrational since the sum can be expressed as a terminating decimal. This means irrational because the decimal ends. The decimal does not end. It is actually 4, right? The decimal goes on forever. Okay, for this next question, it's saying which expression is equivalent to this, right? Looks really scary. What we can do for this, whenever you have variables in the answer, what we can do is just pick a number for A and pick a number for B. So I'm going to pick A is 2 and B is 3, and we're going to plug that in. So we'd have 2 to the power of 8, 3 to the power of 6. I'm going to put that in my calculator just to see what I get. Make sure you're putting parentheses. So negative 473. Now we want to see which of these would give the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to just try answer 3. So what I'm doing is anytime I see A, I'm putting 2, and anytime I see 3 or B, I'm putting 3. So look, I'm following this right now. So parentheses 2, because instead of A, I'm putting 2 to the power of 4, close to the power of 2, minus, and then parentheses, instead of B, I'm putting 3, 3 to the power of 2. Just make sure you have it typed in. And look, that gives you the same thing. It's equivalent. Boom. That is your answer. The sum of this and this. So you could do this by hand, but we can use the calculator. Sum means addition, right? So let's add these. I'm going to do 2 square root of 27 plus 4 square root of 12. I'm going to get 24.248. Look, none of the answers look like this because they're in radical form. We need to put it in decimal form. So I'm going to put this in my calculator. 14 square root of 3. Look, the decimals match. These are the same decimals. So that is actually your answer. It's just the answer in 2 different forms. One is in decimal form and one is in radical form. Okay. This question is a little bit confusing. Yeah. So I'm going to skip this one for now. We haven't really talked about it. Some of y'all might be able to figure it out. So let's do this one. Given the function, what is the value of g of negative 2? All this means is I'm replacing the x with negative 2. So I'm rewriting this, but instead of x, I'm putting negative 2. And then you just put it in your calculator. So much calculator stuff, right? So first I need to put in a fraction. So alpha y equals 2 to the power of negative 2 plus 3. And then again, negative 2 to the power of 2 minus 2. Again, make sure you're typing it correctly, right? In the top, both things are in the exponent. In the bottom, only one of the things is in the exponent. If you type it incorrectly, you will get 1. Okay, for this one right here, which of the graphs represents a function? When you're given a graph and you're trying to see if it's a function, you have to use the vertical line, right? So this is not a function because it hits the graph twice. This is a function because it only hits the graph once. Every time you draw a vertical line, you can see how many times it hits. If it hits once, it's a function. If it hits more than once, it is not a function. C is also not a function because what if I draw a vertical line just right down there? It hits at every point. So the answer would be A and B. For this question, it's giving you an equation and it's saying, hey, what if we make everything, like what if we get m by itself, okay? So let me rewrite it. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to get rid of the denominator by multiplying both sides by 2. Because look, these two are going to cancel out. So I'm left with 2k equals mv squared. And then to get rid of the v squared, I divide it. So I'm left with this. Okay, multiple ways to do this question. One, you could actually solve it. Let's say you forget how to solve. Look, one of these has to be correct, and these are all the different values for x. So let's try 8 over 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these x's with parentheses 8 over 3. So it's going to look like something like this. It's not going to look pretty, but it's doable. Okay? So I'm going to go to my calculator. Alpha y equals, right? We're just going to put this side in the calculator. Alpha y equals, press enter. So 2, parentheses 3, parentheses, I need another fraction. Alpha y equals 8 over 3. Going to close the parentheses, minus 1, close the parentheses, over 3, right? I'm just typing exactly what I see. Okay, that gives me 4.6667. Now I need to check the right-hand side. So alpha y equals, this one's way easier to type in. So 8 over 3, and then plus 2. Look, it gives me the same decimal. Is that equal to each other? Yes, that is correct. So your answer would be 4. This is how you would do the question algebraically. You would multiply every single term by 3. This would cancel out. So you would be left with 2, parentheses 3x minus 1. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is 6. Distribute. 6x minus 2 equals 3x plus 6. Subtract 3x. 3x minus 2 equals 6. Add 2 on both sides. 3x equals 8. Divide by 3. X equals 8 over 3. Okay? So, 2 ways that you can do this. We're going to skip 22. Okay, 23, axis of symmetry. So axis of symmetry is a line that crosses through the vertex. Like here's an example. So the axis of symmetry is always the x value of the vertex. So in this case, the vertex is 3, negative 1. And it's asking which one is the axis of symmetry x equals 2. So this is not 2. So this is not, the axis of symmetry here would be x equals 3. If you notice, here's the vertex. The axis of symmetry is always the x value, so x equals 0, so that's not it either. For this next one, right, let's check in our calculator, right? We don't have a graph, we don't have points, we don't have a table, we just have an equation. So we need to go to y equals, we're going to type in this, 2x squared plus 8x, hit second graph. We're going to look for a table that matches ourselves. Right? I see it. Negative 2. So the vertex is negative 2, negative 8. So it would be x equals negative 2. Is that what we want? We want positive 2. So it's not that either. So let's see if we're doing this right. Same thing. We're given another equation. I'm going to clear this. I have x squared minus, minus 4x minus 5. Second graph. Look for the vertex. See a pattern. So I see the vertex, right? Because I see the pattern. The vertex is 2, negative 9. That means the axis of symmetry is x equals 2. That would be our answer. Each day, okay, last question. These questions seem confusing, but they're not that crazy if you get the pattern. So it's saying which expression represents the number of railroad cars passed by Anna's house per minute. So number of cars, we're looking for cars per minute. So what you're looking for is to cancel out units. And the way that we can do that is by crossing things out if they're on the top and the bottom. So for example, I see mile and mile here, but they're both at the top. So we can't cross it out. So it's not going to be 1. Mile and mile, again, both at the top. Can't cross it out. Here, let's look here. So mile and mile, one at the top, one at the bottom. So I can cancel out. There should be other things that I can cancel out. Hour and hour. One's at the bottom, one's at the top. I can cancel it out. And then feet and feet. Great. One's at the top, one's at the bottom. Can cancel out. So what am I left with? I'm left with car per minute. And that's what I'm looking for. So 3 is the answer. And 4 doesn't work because Let's see. Look, hour and hour are both at the bottom. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? So that was a multiple choice from June. Of course, I skipped a few questions. You should guess always. If you skip questions, just bubble something random in. And if you have questions, just email me.